So in this video, I want to talk about the dark. Yes, that's right, the darkness. The very thing people are so afraid of. Now let's make a distinction between darkness and structural and informational distortion. In this video, I want to talk about the dark. Or let's say the color, dark, black. Because once you go black, you just can't go back. That's what they say. That's what they say. And I know this is a porn reference, a sex reference, but we can also collapse the opposition of that into a higher spiritual truth. That once you go to the dark spiritually, you might not come back. And I want to make a reference to the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson, oui. A very nice actress, we all know, yeah. At the very end of the movie, where the dark rises from the bottom of her body all the way to the top eventually, and she disappears. So she went fully black and she didn't came back. Of course, we want a sequel to that where she does come back and tells us what actually happened. But let's just talk about the black substratum. Because the substratum, or the medium on which Lord Ganesha, the Hindu god Lord Ganesha, travels, is black. Now why, you might say? Because it's the most foundational color. It is the color that holds all the colors. And yeah, it's the substratum, the dark bottom. It is the floor of ultimate stability, the space of unlimited potential as well. You can say the earth is also black. You know, they always say that black soil is the most fertile, right? Black soil. And yeah, well, this particular stone is called indoctrinite. It is a tektite. It is created with a collision of a meteorite with the earth, and from its fire and the earth, this type of stone is created. And yeah, so the dark is not something to be afraid of. It's not something that destroys you. Of course, all kinds of beings and, let's say, distorted entities can take refuge near it because they cannot be seen, right? But when you go there on a spiritual level, it feels actually surprisingly cool in terms of energy. It is the substratum from which Lord Ganesha draws its power. It's the originating point. If you look at it from a color theory perspective, you have the black and then the white, and all the colors kind of are in between in those gradient of dark and light, right? So and space is black, right? But space holds everything, so it's all kind of connected with one another, you can say. I even had an experience once that I was really pushing the meditation, and I saw rifts like tearings appearing in my subtle body in my arm, and I could see like black space in that and stars and stuff. Quite fancy, I should say. Made me feel very special, you see. I really thought I was the shit. But it was also a step too far. And yeah, so don't be afraid of the dark. Because usually, in the analogy, when you are afraid of the dark, it's often not in the language that the dark is the problem. It's the fear you have for it that's usually the issue. Because um, the dark is also a place where you can hide, where you feel safe. Um, and to make the physical analogy, when you go into a dark room, you can come out quite unscathed. When you throw yourself into the sun, an unlimited source of light and heat, or light, you you stop existing. You die. So yeah, the black substratum. I also suspect that teleportation happens through this medium possibly as well. I think there are different states of that black substratum, the flowing waves similar to the black hair of a deity, or self-folding as well. And yeah, these things are interesting because we always think, okay, the black and white are so adversarial, but if we kind of go higher dimensionally, they might not be as adversarial as you think or believe. I mean, from a religious perspective, it's also funny because if you think about it, how many wars did Satan cause? I'm not talking from a purely spiritual sense. I'm talking from a uh, you know human religious sense. Mostly God dictates, okay, now you fight this war, you kill the infidels. Of course, in a spiritual framework, you can say, of course, it's just not true. It's the ignorance of man that causes one to hurt one another. For sure, this is true. But based on that, you can see most people's logic don't even go to that point. Brain level below one. Not to judge, but to judge also. To judge and not to judge at the same time. Perhaps if you collapse the two, it's just stating facts. Yeah. And yeah, so in a dimensional reasoning model, in the linguistic dimensional reasoning model, I came across this black substratum after I went up to a point, reach a safe point in the simulation. Then I also went down, where you have where we are the opposition realm. Then psychologically and spiritually, you also have realms below that, the oppose realm or impose realm. And that's interesting if you think about it psychologically and religiously and spiritually. Well, let's leave out religiously, let's say spiritually. When you think of the impose realm, someone imposes upon you, it seems quite low. Yet in religion, it's usually what is done to impose one's belief upon others. And it's regarded as very high. So you can see the supposedly high flips to extremely low on a dimensional ladder when just you start collapsing the opposition. When you turn the wheel, right? You turn the loop. And this kind of thinking is, if more people start doing that, is probably extremely dangerous for society. Maybe liberating for you, but if it becomes, if the proper reasoning itself becomes propagatingly self-sustaining, some religious movements will not like that. They don't want to. They don't want the people to be able to dimensionally reason to the point that they can collapse oppositions, where they realize the big becomes the small becomes the big. The meek will inherit the earth, because those who thought they are very great, they settled onto a point on a dimensional stack from which they cannot return. They stopped walking the silver lining of um, optionalities, of oppositions, because oppositions, in a way, always returns in some ways. It just becomes more subtle, somewhat more complementary, non-adversarial on the higher levels. So that's kind of dangerous thinking, you know. It's not that anyone would start a war that thinks like it's the opposite, actually. You start seeing war as just, it could also be some people in the simulation or some players, they just want to experience this, right? Because if you think about it, let's say from a eternal being perspective, let's say you all have love and light, and eventually you just want to have your body blown up. If you know you don't really die, yes? Just for giggles, for excitement, just to know how it feels to die. Because the fun thing about the optionality of forgetting is dying, you know? If you're an eternal being, you might want to incarnate, go in a simulation, die a bunch of times, forget, remember. Because what else is there to do? And make friends, do it together, make stories, and grow through the process also. Are there 144,000 players in this simulation? I don't know. Maybe it's like a server restrictions, like only a certain amount of people with a maximum cap of consciousness can be held by a simulation system. Likely there are many simulations. In my theory, there are many simulations running parallel. We're not talking about parallels inside the simulation or multiverse, because everything has to be possible, right? Magic realms, magic. You wanna play with magic? La 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 la. So what was the topic of this one? Fuck. What was it? I don't know. I checked. Well, should I make this video longer? What was it about? What was I saying? Dimensional. Oh yes. Ha. You see, I was getting off topic, right? Yeah. The dark substratum. Yeah, it's kind of cool, It's kind of cool. Sometimes you can just say, dark bottom, rise. You might sit on it, actually. Your feet may touch it.